So I read recently that kind of the old EU that was kind of scattershot all over the place, the authors, at least in the books, can kind of pick and choose what they want to make now canon, if you will. Like Lucino was talking about that in Tarkin. They were in the interviews talking as if his previous Darth Vader books and stuff counted. Is there any? Are you guys told to kind of stay away from the old EU, like characters that were created only in the EU before, or can you suddenly, like a character like say Dash Rendar out of Shadows of the Empire, you know?
Again, I don't think it's impossible. I don't think that stuff is all rendered like out completely. It's just we would have to have a reason for it, and people would have to want to do it. And I mean, for our part in Clone Wars, we always try to include things from the EU. We would take designs that were done. We would take stories. You know, there weren't really actually holocrons in any of the films until we put them in Clone Wars, but we knew about them, you know, from things. So it's at a base level, we're fans, and there are just things we like about Star Wars that I know other people like. Like Republic Commandos got into Rebels because I knew how much people loved them, and I loved playing that game. And I had friends that worked at LucasArts that made that game, and so you know. I don't know that George really would have known what a Republic Commander was because he didn't invent it, but he didn't mind that I put them in the game and they had a cameo.
I think
in the movie.
Yeah, I think actually Rex's original name was Alpha.
It was Alpha from the comic books.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think Lucino's right. I mean, you can kind of pick things and it gets vetted through story. The thing we watch now is that we're not contradicting each other in what we're doing now and going forward, and then what got written, and you know, so it's an ever-increasing amount of information you have to know. This is very hard, but it's Star Wars, and math and science never remembered so much. Star Wars, I tend to retain really easily. So I'm in my strength zone. I got these guys. So go ahead.
Since Sabine's a Mando, are we going to get a little bit more glimpse of the Mando Society and Rebels, maybe?
Well, it's not impossible. I mean, anything's possible within my budget. But I mean, we showed quite a bit of it in Clone Wars, and that we caused a big fuss there because the Mandalorians were always seen as a warrior people, and then George was very adamant about the having to be a pacifistic society. What I liked about that was it meant that the society evolved over generations, and it wasn't always the same, which is true in our own world. Although we showed them by the end spiral back into a war. So Sabine's a product of, how old would she be? She was in like 2 or 3, I think, by the end of the Clone Wars. She'd been very young. So it's interesting to deal with characters like her and Ezra that don't really have the history that the rest of the characters that we already knew did, as far as Clone Wars goes. But I don't know, the Mandalorians are very popular. So, as evidence today.
We wouldn't know it by your shirt, though.
No. Yeah. Wouldn't know who you're supporting. Oh, we got several layers of support happening. One wonders how far it goes. We won't ask.
Stand up.
So my question would be, like, as starting from scratch, you know, doing Rebels from the Clone Wars or anything else, what was your thought process and like guidelines going along with making a character like the Inquisitor, like as far as like the old Sith or like what they did, like would there be any type of preferences or any type of relations with other Sith, like with him? I'm not sure.
You mean like Rule 2?
Yeah.
Well, you might ask the question: are Inquisitors Sith? He didn't ask that question.
You might get answer to it.
Get answer to it. I mean, actually, when it comes to that the question about the Inquisitors, I wasn't there during your early conversations about it.
That's why I was letting you answer.
Thanks.
Well, the Inquisitor idea came out of a basic need, which was that Vader, we could not have him chasing these rebels around. We all felt that if Vader was in the show, it would be about a 2-episode show. One where he finds them and one where he tortures them and then they're dead. Probably Chopper lives. But, so we needed a bad guy. And since the Emperor had dominion and total control, we thought he wouldn't be as threatened. He knew about Ventress the Duke had an apprentice. So he's let there be multiple people before being trained. And we've dealt with some things in Clone Wars that showed the Emperor have some interest in other surrogate force wielders when he was capturing children and whatnot. So we thought it's okay to have these kind of hunters, these hunting dogs, like the Inquisitor, who would seek out Jedi. And if it's someone like Obi-Wan Kenobi, then he would contact Vader and Vader would come and deal with them. But the galaxy's so big, and you're looking for, you know, a very small amount of Jedi, that Vader couldn't be everywhere. And Vader mainly has to keep watch over the secrecy of the Death Star and, you know, any large rebel movement. But at this point, the Empire does not see the rebels as a threat. They don't see any type of organized rebellion. I mean, remember, in A New Hope it says the Rebel Alliance has scored its first major victory against the Empire. And we're not up to that time period yet, so as you notice in our show, we haven't had a major victory. We have these small personal victories for people, for this small band of rebels, but we don't have any Star Cruisers or anything like that running around. I think that in popular fandom, people want to believe that the rebels are always what you see in Echo Base, but that's much later on in the story. And then even then, the only time the rebels ever amass in any strength is in Jedi. That's like their one big shot. They're basically going to win at Endor, or their whole rebellion is done. So you kind of have to gauge, and even then, if you think about it in that movie, when they have all their ships gathered, tricking the Empire, they are nothing compared to the Imperial fleet, right, that's there. So the Inquisitor was brought in then to hunt down these smaller pockets, which Vader basically would be a waste of his time to bother with. Because I don't think Vader would care much about Kanan. You know, he's like, what was he, some low-rent Jedi kid when Anakin was in his prime? Anakin might have taught him how to swing a lightsaber, you know, for all he knows. So he probably wouldn't see him as much of a threat.
Yeah.
Will we get an answer as to who Fulcrum is this season?
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you that. That's a great question. I'm glad you want to know. That would be great. That would be cool.
More episodes we got?
So therefore, how many more episodes?
Yeah, how many more episodes?
Did you see the Lando episode yet?
Oh yeah,
Did you
like
like
10
that?
times. I loved it.
Awesome.
Yeah, they had to design for the scene. Some of you haven't seen it. Well, you know where they were playing cards?
Yeah.
They had to design the whole deck of Sabacc
There's the
cards.
full deck.
And I was like, you have to make this accurate. You have to make all the cards. Because people will know. People will freeze this frame and say, you have the wrong hand. That hand's
Well,
not
we
that
actually
hand.
did consult Pablo as well.
Pablo Hidalgo,
Pablo
yeah.
Hidalgo came in and told us what hands could play, like, the Idiot's Array. It was a whole thing. Like,
It's a real thing.
it's legit. The whole, like, what you're seeing is a correct way to play Sabacc. So, but yes, there's a full deck.
This is a Sabacc deck that someone here made.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they actually learned it. They got the chips. And
No way.
They spent a lot of time and effort.
We actually know some people that could probably play that person. That is like, let me see that. That's cool. Does it look like what you did? It's similar, huh?
It's the same.
Look at that.
It's the same.
That is
It's
awesome.
Oh
slightly
my
different
gosh.
style. Yeah, it's
Wow.
the same symbols.
It's the same symbol.
Well, those are credits.
I know what that is. What is that? Oh, look at that.
Don't look at the hat.
Hi guys.
This is the maker of our in-store Sabacc deck.
Oh, very nice.
I'm gonna be honest, Brian helped a lot. He cut all those stencils.
And you play Sabacc?
We were playing Sabacc. Are you guys gonna play a game of Sabacc with us later?
No, I don't know how. I wouldn't know.
He did, that's what Brian did.
I didn't direct that
He spent a
episode.
good 3 hours in the corner of the store, mumbling to himself, learning how to play it, and then I spent the time stenciling it. My sister drew the
Awesome.
Queen of Air and Darkness.
It's really cool. It's really cool.
Find the idiot? Oh, you gotta find the idiot.
I got to do it. Sorry. That was too easy. You didn't jump on it fast enough.
So in short, it's Jar Jar dancing.
That's not, is it really? That's hilarious. Well, great job.
Thank you.
That's awesome. them to do great deeds as he does later for Luke. And that's the trick. It's to be eternal, you gain nothing for yourself, but everything for everyone else. That's selflessness versus selfishness. So when you think back to the Jedi and Sith, you think of those two things. Now, anything outside of that, you have different versions. In Clone Wars, we have the Mortis trilogy, where you had the father, the daughter, and the brother that represented these iconic light side, dark side, and neutral, and the father was the neutral balance point. See, so there are things outside of it. And it's just something we've scratched the surface of at this point. But I would say that like any kid that's born now post-Empire, they aren't Jedi just because they're Force intuitive. You know, everybody is Force intuitive. Han is. He just doesn't realize it. He calls it luck, right? But when he's in the moment doing what he loves best, flying out on the edge, well, he's probably tapped into the Force. Not per se how Luke is. He doesn't have that level of control. But the whole point of it, George would say, is that we're all connected to it in some way. For example, like you can learn a martial art, right? And you can train every day, but you probably will never be as good as Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's Anakin Skywalker. Some people are just, whatever you call it, divine or whatnot, gifted in a way with certain skills that no matter how much someone practices, they won't obtain. Anakin obtains that skill easily. Other people work harder at it, like Obi-Wan. You know, so these are just ways. The best way to write a Star Wars story, and we talk about all the time, is to compare it to real life. And you subtract everything that makes it Star Wars X-Wings, Y-Wings, whatever you want to call it, and you just say, this is a story. You know, Luke is any kid growing up on a farm, doesn't know who his parents are, grew up with his aunt and uncle, and he faces the uncertain future knowing that one day I have to leave here, which is a fear that every kid knows they face when they will leave home, right? That's why you connect with it. If you base your story on the material things of the Star Wars universe, you've limited yourself and the type of story you can tell, and you won't connect with the audience. You know, so.
Yeah. It's true. It's even true in design.
Yes.
We don't look at just the Star Wars movies because you're going to be in this sort of spiral, because great as they are, there's a finite amount of stuff that you can reference. Yeah. So we look at everything, like, you know, any sort of natural history book, photographs of different environments, macro photography of plants, animals, armor from any culture or any period in history, but it all informs what you're doing, because that's how you keep it fresh, is that you're drawing, you know, on different sources all the time. So it's true for story.
And you found stories like about old war stories, guys fighting tanks in World War II. I mean, real things, and then those become a story. I mean, the same as my grandfather would tell me a story. I just am doing it through digital animation at a very high cost, and he just did it to entertain me. Same thing. You know.
Yeah, we start with the characters and the emotional reality, and I think that's what's really great about Rebels is it is this family, and you're going to have a family who gets along sometimes and who bickers and fights and plays pranks on each other. I think that's really why a lot of people love these characters, is because they immediately relate to them, as Dave was saying.
Cool. Thank you guys very much for coming out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us, and you know, I asked Kilian and Henry to come up with me, so thank you guys for being here. I do appreciate it, and thank you, Jake. Thank you so much for getting us here. And Bartolome, where is Bartolome?
He's back.
He's hiding in the background. Where is he?
The owner of the shadow. And one more round of applause for Brian and Dominic and everyone else. This took hours and hours and days.
I want to say, you guys have a great community here with the shop. I think it's fantastic to see, not just with Star Wars, but with so many things that you guys get together and do and talk. And I think that's the greatest thing that comes out of any fandom, is that when you all get together collectively. And Chris, you've done a great thing in Santa Rosa to provide an environment where people feel comfortable, they come, they create. I don't undervalue that. Please, people coming here to the store, don't undervalue that. It's a really great thing to have. Too often communities lose places like this. So I think it's really important to keep it alive and thriving. It's a lot of work, a lot more than I think any of us can guess every day. So thank you so much, Chris. Keep it alive and go items.